Good morning. Good morning. We're doing it live here. I'm having a cup of coffee. We're doing it live. Today is, according to the Roman commercial calendar, it's February 2nd. February 2nd today. And yes, my Christmas tree is still up, but it's going to be coming down soon because the pine needles are getting pretty dry. The needles, whatever you call them. But today is the day that that Noah has opened his window. So I thought we'd check in on our friend Noah, who's flying across the sky in his space boat, and see how he's doing. And what he's doing is he's opening the window. He's opening the window, and that the opening of the window corresponds to the full moon, which we have now occurring in the sky at this time of the year. So now, when you're reading Noah's Ark, you have the first day of the 10th month, right? That was the last video that we covered, and then you count 40 days, and then he opens the window, right? So it's the first day of the 10th month. That was the first new moon of December. That was the first day of December, was the new moon, which took place, which corresponded this year with the winter solstice. So the winter solstice, the winter solstice of 2024, we had a new moon, and I shaved my head on that day. If you remember, if you watched the video, I've got no hair on my head at that time. Now I have a little bit of hair on my head. But that was the new moon, and it was also the winter solstice. So it was the first day of December, but it corresponded with the winter solstice. And then since then we count 40 days because we're reading Noah's Ark story together. And what does it say? It says Genesis 8:6. Let me find that in the King James Version. Genesis 8:6. What does it say? Genesis 8:6, King James Version. What it says. It says, I like the King James Version because I'm speaking English. Well, it says here, Genesis 8:6, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days since the first day of December, which is the 10th month. December is 10. So it says, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Let's look at the whole chapter here. So 8. Okay, so that was right. So we had on chapter 8, we've got the waters returned from the earth. That was chapter 8:3. The waters returned from the earth continually, and after the end of 150 days, the waters abated. Okay, we already went through that part. So he lands on Mount Ararat. That was back in autumn, the 7th month. Okay, so then we get to the 10th month. And it says here, okay. So chapter 8:5, this is the one we did the last video I made about Noah's Ark. It says, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. It says, in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. So he's sitting there since the autumn equinox of the 7th month. He's been sitting there on Mount Ararat, the Caucasus Mountains, where the Caucasians came from. I'm a Caucasian. So he's sitting there on the mountains of Ararat, and the waters start to recede. And now it says here, back in chapter 8:5, the last video I made, the tops of the mountains were seen. This is corresponding to the winter solstice and the first day of the 10th month, which is December. Now, in the old Babylonian calendar, what do they call the 10th month? Is that Tebetu? Was that Tebetu? I think it was. Let me see. What was it? What was the 10th month in? Let's look up Zodiac. I've got it on my computer here. Zodiac. Zodiac of the Babylonians. Babylon. Here we go. Let me put this over here. And it says the 10th month. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th month was called Tebetu. Okay. We are now in the month, which is the 11th month of the calendar of the old calendar. The 11th month is called Sabatu. This is the month of the Sabbath. Sabatu is Sabbath. So this is the Sabbath month in the old Babylonian calendar. And we're in the full moon period right now because it's been 40 days. The 40 days since the first day of the 10th month was around on our commercial calendar. That occurred actually a few days ago. I'm a little late because that occurred on January 30th, I believe, because I counted it back when I did the last video. So now we're in Sabatu. We're in the month of Sabatu, and it's the full moon, right? It's the full moon. And it says here, chapter 8, Genesis, verse 6, says, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Interesting. He sends out a raven. A raven. Ravens are really cool now that I just think of ravens. When I go for my runs, I haven't been on a run in a while. I've been letting my legs heal. But when I was going on my runs during the summer, I kept seeing ravens out there, and ravens are really big, beautiful animals, beautiful birds. And you know a raven because they make a certain sound. Like all the ravens that live out in the woods where I go running, they all make a certain type of sound. They communicate with each other with a certain sound, different than a crow. They look like crows, but they're bigger, and they make a different sound. But they're really cool. They're very beautiful animals. So anyway, there's this idea. Let's get back to this here. Okay, so it says and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. So the raven flies around and then until the waters are dried up. So he just flies around until the water dries up. Okay. And it says also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet other 7 days. Okay, so that's the next thing. So we've got 40 days, which was actually about, the 40 days was about January 30th. So he's open. So on January 30th of our calendar, which is the 40th days after the first day of the 10th month, which puts us right here in close to this, right up until where we are right now, into this full moon period. So so this is kind of what I was thinking. It's almost like, I'm like, what does a full moon have to do with it? Well, this is how they're timing things, but I just got the idea personally that when I was thinking about it, I was looking up in the sky, and the full moon is like kind of like the window opening. Like he's opening the window, and that's the moon. The light's coming out because he's opened the window. So he's opened the window, and that's like the full moon, right? Is the light coming through the window of the moon? That's what I was thinking when I was planning to make the video. But anyway, it's just a funny little idea. So it says here first he lets out a raven, and then he sends out a dove. And so now there's a 7-day period. So from I think I had calculated it last time, but being the 30th was was a 40-day period. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're heading through this week. And then I guess by the end of this week here of our Friday will be the end of a 7-day period. And then he does the next thing. So this is how they've calculated the Noah's Ark story. The Noah's Ark is a calendar. Noah's Ark is the sun going through the calendar. And this is how they calculated the story. Which reminds me of this idea of that I used to hear when I was in church with my mother, which is on earth as it is in heaven. There's a line from the Bible, something about on earth as it is in heaven. What does it say? On earth as it is in heaven. And people got a weird idea about this. So, and I did too. I'm like, on earth as it is in heaven. So does that mean we're all, because if you're illiterate and you can't read, you go around telling people that all the spirits live in heaven. It's from the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6:10. Let's read it and see what it says. What does it say? Matthew 6:10, King James Version. Matthew 6:10, King James Version. Okay. What does it say? It says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. As above, so below. On earth as it is in heaven," right? So those are some concepts that people had about the people that were studying the Bible. And the reason is because you coordinate your life to what happens in heaven. And so this is a really important thing. I want you to listen carefully, particularly if you're somebody who desires to have some form of regimen or structure or order to your life, right? One of the things about taking a person away from the coordination with the stars and the sky and the moon and the sun and the calendar and putting them on this commercial calendar of the Romans is that you lose your connection to nature. And so how do you have an orderly life, right? That's connected to God when you live in a modern world with technology? Because when your phone is like, you have a smartphone that talks to you, can give you entertainment 24 hours a day, and you've got these lights that come on in the middle of the night. So there's lights all the time, and there's communication happening all the time. And so it's almost like technology and the commercial calendar. The commercial calendar takes you away from nature and puts you into another environment, which is totally disconnected from God. And that's why many human beings are totally disconnected from God. That's why they put masks on their face when the TV tells them to. Stuff like that. I don't want to get into that, though, because we're not making a political video today. But understand they're disconnected from nature. They're disconnected from God, right? What's an easy way to get connected to God without having to talk to some stupid pastor or some stupid priest or anything? Well, you've got the universe, right? The universe is your connection to creation. And the universe has a pattern to it. It's got a rhythm to it. It's got a pattern to it. See, and so one of the things that we can all agree on is the universe. Get it? See, we can all agree on the universe. So like when you get into religion, right, you start arguing about what this means and that means and this means and that means. We can argue, and you think it means this and I think it means that. You know what's really obvious, though, is the sun in the sky and the moon in the sky and the stars in the sky. See, these are things that we all have in common. So this is a common agreement. The universe is a common agreement. It's the thing we can all agree on. Okay. And it's actually the mind. It's actually the mind. The nature of reality is that the universe is essentially an idea, and it's a common idea. It's something that it's an idea we all hold in common and we all see together. Okay. But I don't want to get into that aspect of it on this video. I want to get into this idea that you can coordinate your own personal life to the heavens. You see, the heavens aren't mystical fairyland. Okay. You shouldn't think of it in those terms. It's real. It's reality. It's space. It's energy. It's objects. It's the mind. It's a common mind. It's the common mind of Theos, and Theos is within me, and Theos is within you, and in common we have this thing called the mind, which is the universe. So it's a real thing. Okay, it's real. It's real. So when you say on earth as it is in heaven, that doesn't mean like heaven's where all the spirits are, and we're all going to act like spirits, and we're going to pretend we're spirits on the earth, because that gets weird. Okay, that gets weird. That gets really weird, and it doesn't actually produce something good. It produces like a weird LARPing society, people LARPing as spirits. Well, basically, we all are spirits. You don't need to LARP as one. You just need to be yourself. You see what I mean? Instead of LARPing as a spirit, just be yourself. You've solved the problem. So the spirits aren't in the heavens, right? The heavens aren't where the spirits are. What's in heaven? See, heaven is like a desert. It's literally like, we should talk about the nature of reality. The universe is the mind. And just like when you imagine something, you can see it. You can see the thing you're imagining. You can see it clear as day. But it's not, it's there because it's real because you can see it, but it's not the real thing because you're the thing causing the imagination, right? So if you're causing the imagination, because you're imagining it, you're seeing it, you're thinking of it, and it appears. See, you think it and it appears. That's the entire process of creation. You think it and it appears. That's the whole process of creation. That's how the universe is continually recreated in each new moment of time, collectively. That's the collective mind. That's what it talks about in the Hermetic science, the collective mind. The universe is the mind. So when you're imagining something and then you stop imagining it, it just goes away. But collectively, we don't stop imagining the universe. It's very solid. It's like the most reconsidered thought. I don't know how to articulate that. But anyway, so what I was saying is, where are the spirits? Well, they're where you are, me and you, right? And then out in space, that's the mass. That's the mind. That's the illusion of the mind, which is real. It's not fake. It's very real. It's the realest thing that there is, because Theos, the mind of Theos, is that okay? Space and objects are the natural inclination of Theos. So the natural inclination of Theos, the natural inclination of Theos is spaces and objects. That's what appears. That's what appears. So that is the nature of reality. Okay, but the natural inclination of Theos is spaces and objects, and that's why we have a universe. So that's where the spirits are. That's where we are, and the universe is just spaces. That's the mind out there. So, but what I'm saying is, we all agree on this thing called the mind, right? And so here we are living in human bodies on the earth, and we look up in the sky, and it looks like we're in this big, gigantic universe. We've got stars and suns going over the sky, right? Stars, moons, suns, planets. And so we coordinate our human lives to what's happening in the sky, you see, on earth as it is in heaven. See, we coordinate our lives to what's happening in the sky. When the sun comes up in the morning, we get up and go to work. When the sun goes down at night, we go to sleep. In the summer, we're out there going to the beach and getting in the sun and running around and doing lots of work and being productive. And in the winter, we got to get in early because it's going to be cold, and we got to coordinate our lives around the seasons. We got to coordinate our lives around the sun and the moon and the stars. You see, this is the thing we all have in common. So this is the foundation of a community religion. A religious community is organized primarily around the seasons and the sun and what's happening in the sky. Now, Of course, we do not worship the sun in the sky. We worship the Logos, which is like the sun. You get it? The Logos is like the sun. The truth is like the sun. Righteousness is like the sun. So the thing that we worship is the Logos, and it's like the sun. So there's a coordination between what's happening in the sky and what's happening within us. That the light within us, which is not a visible light, it's not photons, but it's like the sun. And that's basically the philosophy. That's the philosophy of the religion. So you have, but the idea is, this idea of on earth as it is in heaven. Well, that is an idea that we coordinate our lives with the sun, and then collectively as a community, we coordinate our lives with the sun. And we need to get more towards the natural calendar and further away from the commercial calendar, in my opinion, because the commercial calendar, if people are just on a commercial calendar, it destroys the civilization. Because I'm looking at civilization, it's not that great. And part of the reason why it's not that great is because people are focused too much on the commercial calendar. And so the calendar you need to keep an eye on is the solar and the lunar. So like, that's why, like, if you notice, just something I do, you don't have to do this, but this is just what I do. I shave my head for the winter solstice. I do it every year. Why? Because I'm the sun man, because I am Shemesh, the sun man. See, I am the sun man. I'm Shemesh. I am Shemesh, the sun man. That's why I shave my head for the winter solstice, because I like to coordinate. It's almost like I've always had this thing, like, you know how like some people like to have an orderly society, and then they have something they can work within the boundaries of, and other people just live in chaos. And then they end up not having any kind of like anything to coordinate their lives to. Well, I like coordinating my life with nature and God. You see, so one of the ways I do that is by shaving my head, and it's not something other people. I'm not saying other people have to do this. It's just something I like to do because it just reminds me of where I am in the calendar. Where am I in this scheme of the year? Right? It's like I'm coordinating my existence with the sun, and I like to do that. It's fun. I do it because it's fun. But I also another thing I've started doing is I've started doing, and I don't necessarily know that I can always do this, but I like to do it if I can, is do a fast for a couple days during the new moon. And I did that this last new moon. It was really nice. I did a 3-day fast, and it was a good one. And sometimes I'll do a fast on a random time. Sometimes my body just needs it. Like if I've been abusing my body. I mean, if you ever watch my videos, sometimes I'm drinking beer, or like I'll eat buckets of ice cream or something. So I'll be like, okay, I need to do a fast and reset the body. But whatever we decide to do, it doesn't have to be what I'm suggesting. But there has to be, I just think it's a good idea to coordinate life with, for instance, the new moon and the full moon. Like back in the old days, on the new moon, that was an important point where people would restart their like it was a chance for people, like, okay, this is the ending period. Because see, the new moon period, you get that last crescent, and then you get no moon, and then you get the new crescent that appears over the sunset, right? And so you have like a 3-day window there, where the moon is gone, and it starts over again. So you're able to so now you're in the next month, and you're able to time things, you're able to organize things with the moon. And then on the full moon period, back in the old days, they would usually have a big feasting time. This is the time of the Sabbath, right? This is the time of the Passover. Is over the full moon. So the full moon is usually a time where, because the moon has achieved its full light, so now it's like it's done its work and it's achieved the light. And this was a time where people would celebrate. So so usually there'd be a celebration on the full moon back in the old days, in pretty much every civilization, in the Israelite, in the Egyptian, in the Chaldean, and the Greek, the Roman, It was in the Celtic. Everybody did this. Now, unfortunately, they also did animal sacrifices and other weird stuff, but that's because they were pagan and we're not pagan, because paganism is barbaric. We follow the logos. See, we follow the logos. We are the supreme. We are the purest. We are the purest because we're not pagans. We're not in some weird. We don't believe in superstitions. That's a good way to put it. That's the thing about this idea of on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, back in the old days, people would think that the gods were up there in heaven and then we're the measly little people on the earth. That's called superstition. So if you think the gods are up in the heaven, they're standing above you, that means superstition, means to stand above. And instead of being superstitious, you should be interstitious, that God's standing within. You see, God isn't, I'm not superstitious, I'm interstitious. I'm interstitious. That Theos stands within me. There's not God standing above me. That's paganism. Theos living within you through the logos. That's interstitious. I'm interstitious. I'm interstitious. So anyway, so let me just summarize this video. Noah's Ark is a calendar. It's the story of the sun going through the sky. Right now, we're in the part where he opens the window and he lets out the raven and he lets out the dove. And then there's going to be another 7 days and he does something else. And one of the mistakes I made in some of my earlier videos was I was confused about when the second month is, but I'm pretty sure that I was wrong in some of my earlier videos about the timing of the second month. I believe that the second month really does mean the second month. I was thinking I was confusing it with the first month. If you go back and watch some of the other videos, but going through this calendar, it's starting to clarify it for me. So it's helped me to understand it better. But but as a community, what I'd like to say is the thing that we all have in common is the universe around us. That's the common mind. That's the collective mind. And the thing that we have in common as human beings is the sun and the seasons. And this is something we can all coordinate with collectively and not focus so much on the commercial calendar that gets you like on the hamster wheel, but on the calendar, the natural calendar, which comes from God, which gives you a connection to nature. And then you can organize your life around the natural principles in nature, and so now you're more connected to God because you're connected to nature. And if you look at our society and how deviant and subversive it has become, where the people who run the media and the electronics people, right? The electronics people, they try to blur the lines of men and women, and they have a sinister view of children. A sinister view of children. They have a sinister view of children, and they blur the lines of men and women. And they're totally, and this is the electronic people that have taken over much of society. The electronic people, they blur the lines of men and women. They have a sinister view of children, and they're disconnected from nature. They're disconnected from nature, and they're disconnected from the logos. And you can be connected to nature and still not be connected to the logos if you're a pagan. So we're not pagans. We love nature, but nature is the nature of reality comes from Theos, and that's where we are, because we're interstitious. We're not superstitious. We're interstitious. We follow the logos. We worship the logos, but we can coordinate. We can stay coordinated with the universe through our own will, with the sun and the moon and what's happening, and that's really the story of Noah's Ark. The story of Noah's Ark is the sun boat. It's the sun going through the calendar, and that's really all it is. It's a beautiful story. Well, that's not really all it is. It's a story of the sun going through the calendar, which is supposed to remind you that the sun is like God's word, and that God's word saves Noah because it's the truth. And so if you follow the truth, which is called the Logos, then you're saved. You're saved. You're saved forever. You just stay with the Logos. You stay with the Logos, right? And it saves you. While everything else is going crazy, you're right there with the Logos. You're just right there on the path of Logos. So you don't stray off into these other directions because you're just right where you need to be at all times. So anyway, that's the message today. Have a good day, and we'll talk again.